on, guys? What's going on? All right, so we're gonna take care of some housekeeping stuff real quick.
Let's do it.
We're out of order on our podcast episode.
Absolutely.
We posted like 2 weeks ago that we were gonna do our chasing with chainsaws.
That one's gone.
It's gone. We had a camera hiccup.
Yep.
So we're gonna have to refilm that one. So anyways, we're gonna end up actually talking about something else, and we'll get back to our original schedule after this. You know, Hurricane Helene.
After this important announcement.
All right. No.
Yep.
This Hurricane Helene kind of came at a interesting time, and so we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
We are currently monitoring Milton,
Right.
which is a Category 4 this morning. It went through an eyewall replacement cycle last night.
Dropped
It
overnight.
did drop, but you know, one thing it's important to remember. Eyewall replacement cycles, though they temporarily weaken the hurricane, they actually expand the wind field.
Yep.
So people always focus on, it's not a Category 5 or a Category 4 anymore. That's not necessarily a good thing.
No,
because
not
the
at all.
wind field is expanding.
That's what Helene did. Helene
Right.
had a eyewall replacement
and
before it made landfall.
And it was a super large hurricane compared to Milton. But that's what we're going to talk about today is Hurricane Helene. So I do want to go over some of the stats of Hurricane Helene, and then also kind of your impression of the storm. And then I'd like to talk about our first response.
Yeah. Which was an amazing trip.
It was an amazing trip, and kind of how we started right after landfall, that day locally, and then how we transitioned into a South Georgia response.
Yeah.
And then also talk about, just some of the crazy things that have happened with this hurricane that weren't super expected. Well, I shouldn't say that. Were exceeded expectations. So
because they knew what was going to happen
Right.
to a degree, but it
ended up being worst case scenario. And we're going to talk about some of that stuff. But I do, just want to, talk about some of the stats real quick. As of this recording, things will change.
Yeah.
But still, it's an incredible storm. And I've kind of been comparing it to, and I think it's justified. See what you think. I've kind of been comparing it to this current generation's Katrina.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of a benchmark storm in a lot of ways.
Katrina was almost 20 years ago.
Right, which is crazy to think about. 2005 being almost 20 years ago. And
we still talk about it. I mean,
Right.
we have conversations with people about Katrina.
Yeah.
I mean, it comes up still.
Yeah, I mean, that's where a lot of disaster response as we know it today stemmed from, just because of how catastrophic that hurricane was. And so, we'll go over some of these, some of these stats real quick. So right now there's a little bit over 200 people that were unfortunately, killed during this hurricane, and there's still several hundred missing.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is due to the flooding in North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee. So, that's the water's the number one killer when it comes to hurricanes. A lot of people focus on the wind. They're rated by the wind. The categories are wind driven, which there's a whole nother conversation on how, the messaging behind the potential disaster when a hurricane makes landfall. Should we focus only on the wind when it comes to categories, or should we focus on the impacts as a whole?
Absolutely. And sometimes those impacts are just completely unknown, regardless of category size, because of other weather factors, as well as just you think about what happened with Helene, it was massive. It stretched. At the time it was in South Georgia, Western North Carolina was getting poured on.
Yeah, right.
That's a long.
That's a big distance.
That's a long distance.
Big distance. So it lasted about 10 days from start to finish. Its peak intensity was Category 4. And they said 42 trillion gallons of rain fell over the entire southeastern United States.
That's incredible.
And I want to read some of these rain totals from North Carolina.
Okay.
So I don't know some of these places. Busick Raws had the highest rain total. I don't know really where that is, but at 30.78 inches, which
30
is
inches of rain,
which is insane.
That's a toddler worth of rain.
Right. Yeah.
Like
over the course, several 100 square miles, basically,
Yeah.
Or however big that area is. And then Mount Mitchell State Park, I know we're familiar with that.
Yep.
24.2 inches.
Over how long?
This is like a 48-hour, maybe a little bit longer period.
Yeah.
So we had a PRE is what they call it, predecessor rain event, which kind of made this setup a little bit more extreme.
Yeah.
And it's a rare phenomenon where a tropical system is going to eventually merge with a low pressure system that's over the United States and an associated cold front with that. So that cold front and the outflow from Helene kind of interacted, caused a predecessor rain event, which dumped in some areas 10 to 12 inches or more of rain before the hurricane even got there, the day before the hurricane got there. I know here in Georgia, Cherokee County, we had a ton of rain.
Oh yeah.
Our church flooded actually in the back because our drain spouts on the roof got clogged from 9 square balls.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah. So
we have a lift to fix that.
Yeah, we did. We had to go up there and clear everything out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of rain in a super short amount of time. But there are still, as far as the flooding goes, there are still several hundred people unaccounted for, which is insane. And, all the roads washed away up there. I-40 is probably not going to be repaired until September 2025, which is crazy. And that makes the search and rescue and, unfortunately, the recovery efforts, which a lot of this is recovery now, really hard because you just don't have access. Everything has to be done by air. It's a dense forest, so you have a limited view through the canopy.
Yeah, right through the canopy.
And now it's all hands
horseback,
on, horseback,
ATV,
feet.
I saw a
hiking.
Video the other day of mules.
Yeah,
people using mules to get through the mountains.
It's like the 1800s again. Yeah, up there. I mean, that's essentially what hurricanes and we'll just say disasters, for that matter, kind of take you back to a time before the infrastructure was there because there was so much infrastructure damage. So yeah, I mean, I don't think it's too far off base to kind of compare this to I would say modern day, but a current generation Katrina.
Absolutely.
So there's also there's 33 tornado reports, one of them being an EF3 in North Carolina.
Really?
Yeah. So the tornado threat with this was predominantly in South Carolina, but there was a lot. And at one point, was there like, I'd have to go back and look, but I think at one point was there over like 3 million people without power.
Yeah.
Or 3 million addresses.
Right.
Without power,
which means more people. Yeah, for sure.
So that's just kind of the overview, and there's so much more we could talk about as far as individual impacts on communities and stuff like that. But yeah, Helene was just a monster. So let's talk about your impressions of the storm. Like, when you first, saw how big it was on satellite, even down to Ryan Hall's live stream. We were watching Ryan Hall. I enjoy watching, his correspondence and also just the other chasers at stream.
Yeah. It's fun to watch.
It is fun to watch, and it also gives us a little insight onto what's happening on the ground. But what was your impression of the storm?
Well, first of all, it was primarily this thing's going right over Atlanta.
Right, initially, right. Yeah,
so there was that. I mean, I did my own prep, like I moved cars into the garage that we don't normally park in the garage, which took an effort, we made sure that all the flashlights were charged. Everything was, square. Even took down my kid's basketball goal.
Yeah.
Don't want that flying away, and now it's still down. And
just have put it back.
Haven't put it back up. But, actually, for the first time, I can say this was the first time I've ever had to take a hurricane seriously.
Right.
In the North Atlanta metropolitan area.
Yeah.
Because you watch that model, and it just kept creeping west and west and west until the eye wall was literally going to go up I-75 through Atlanta, which it turns out. It started up I-75 later, as we know, but that was interesting. And I think the lasting impression I have, because obviously, you and I were texting like in the middle of the night Thursday.
Right, we had set alarms basically.
Yes, I set 3 different alarms. My wife was every very 2 hours. Angry. She was like, and then to make matters worse, our weather radio went off for the flash flood warning. And so not only did I have alarms set to wake up to just check and see how we're doing, what's going on, but the weather radio went off twice. And I have it on max volume because I sleep pretty heavy. And she was so mad. Like,
jump scared the whole family.
Oh, she did. And of course, we also were worried about the risk of possible high wind or tornadic activity. So naturally, the first thing you think about when your weather radio goes off is
like a tornado
warning.
Yeah.
Right. So, I'm telling on my wife a little bit, but she jumped out of the bed. As I turned my head over, I could see her like in the air, and she goes, "I'm going to get the kids. Hold on, get ready, get dressed." And I said, "Let me see what the alarm is." Right, and so I kind of rolled over and I was like, "It's just the flash flooding. I'm going back to bed."
Right, yeah.
Which, we live along a creek, which meant I should have taken that a little more seriously.
Hey, but your master bedroom's not on the lowest level.
No,
so
it's not. Right. No, we would have been okay. But that, I think what really the lasting impression I have is the scope.
Yeah.
That, okay, you're talking first of all about storm surge. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about storm surge hitting Tampa Bay, hitting, St. Pete, that area down there.
Cedar Key, Steinhatchee.
Yeah. And that it was, and that obviously the south end of the storm, everything swooped up, and then you're going to have the eye go over, Valdosta and down to Steinhatchee and everything. And so there's the flooding risk with storm surge.
Yeah.
So you're worried about that. But then as it crept east, and like you said, it picked up a lot of that predecessory rain event, the PRE.
Yeah.
As it did that, you saw the risk for tornadoes. Mm-hmm. You saw, Charleston had tornado warnings, Augusta, Savannah, all these areas east of the eye wall had just tornado warnings. And so, tornado warnings radar indicated you don't know if it's actually a tornado on the ground.
Because a lot of times they're, with hurricanes and tropical cyclones, it's not like they are supercells, but it's not like a traditional tornado outbreak where you have like these typically long-lived, like sometimes they can be brief, and sometimes those supercells actually produce tornadoes that don't go warned because of how brief they are. Yeah. And so they could be a lot of surprise tornadoes.
And so then you've got that going on in the middle of the night.
Yes.
And then I was surprised by really trying to understand something I'd never really thought about or took into consideration because we don't typically sit in this position, but the vast difference between the western side of a hurricane and the dirty east side of a hurricane.
Right, yeah.
Something that I've known about, but I've never truly experienced because by mid-morning on that Friday, when the rain came through and the wind came through, it got breezy.
Right, it's like 30
but we were
miles
on
an hour,
the western end of the eye wall, and just what a difference it made, even 60 miles to the east of us.
Right, for sure.
And just the tree damage and just the power outages.
Yeah.
And then that Atlanta had so much. Atlanta floods often in different,
poor drainage.
It's just poor drainage, poor infrastructure. But to see the flash flooding in Atlanta, so
water
you've
rescues.
Got storm, the guy for the Fox Weather Channel, performing that water rescue right in the heart of Atlanta.
Yeah.
But that you've got all of these different factors to then add on it the flooding in North Carolina and Tennessee. So, when you think of a hurricane traditionally, me being from the Mid-South, from, West Tennessee, hurricanes weren't on my radar for a long time. And to really think about, this didn't just do the normal hurricane thing.
Right.
And for the impact to be so great, so far north, that's unprecedented, at least in my lifetime. Nothing that I can seem to remember that experience that, you've got storm surge, tornadic activity, cyclonic activity, if you will, flooding, heavy rainfall, and then massive flooding on a massive scale.
Yeah, I think, the flooding ended up being the story, of this hurricane. And talking about the tree damage so far inland, it really reminded me of Hurricane Michael in a lot of ways, because typically a hurricane, might be moving 10 miles an hour, 15 miles an hour. And Helene was moving at nearly 30 miles an hour. And so you have all that momentum, and you're way further inland in a shorter amount of time. And that gives you more, wind damage further inland because of the fact that the hurricane has had less time to weaken, or it has gone further in the amount of time
before it naturally weakens. And
we have a lot of contacts in South Georgia now from Hurricane Idalia, and unanimously across the board, this one was way worse. At least in the correspondence we've had with our contacts down there. People who went through the eye wall at night, experiencing 120 mile an hour wind gusts in some cases. And some of the stories are pretty wild, just hearing that. And so, I guess.
So help me with this.
Yeah.
This educationally, not only for me, but for others, but you're talking about 120 mile an hour wind gusts. We often in the South think of tornadoes.
Right.
And tornadoes are shorter, much smaller scale.
Yeah,
narrower, longer path, but an EF0 tornado is winds under...
It's like 90 miles an hour.
90, right. Okay. So 120 miles an hour falls where on a tornado?
It's like EF2.
EF2, right? Okay.
Yeah, I believe. Oh, gosh.
That's okay. There's not a test afterwards, But on the scale of the breadth of an eye wall of a hurricane in the middle of the night, I mean, it's really like a long-term, long-track EF2 wind damage going through your hometown, through your town, but not as fast.
Yeah, not as
fast.
Several hours of
several hours of the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, no, it's a good point to remember. Like, you should treat it just as serious as a long duration, slow moving tornado. Because even though they're different in their characteristics, the devastation is still on the same level.
Absolutely.
So it's really important.
Which we saw in Valdosta.
Right. Yeah. That'll segue us into our response.
Right.
To Hurricane Helene. Yeah. It was pretty easy to get plugged in to where we went just because of our contacts. But initially, we didn't really know where we were going to go at first because we had so many small communities in South Georgia that were impacted, family members throughout there.
Yes.
When you have so many communities hit, unlike a tornado, or I should say so much more communities hit, it can get lost in the weeds on like where we should go and where we should get plugged in.
It's a lot different.
A
tornado, it's like, all right, it hit this town.
Right.
We're going to this town or the next one or the next. There's a straight line typically of towns potentially you can go to. Yeah, hurricane. It's massive devastation, and you've got to go, where can I have the greatest impact right now, today?
Right. And the amount of time that we have allotted.
Exactly.
And just so everybody knows, just so everybody knows, we are not yet full-time. This is not a full-time ministry or organization.
Right.
We are all 100% volunteers. Nobody's paid. Nope. We have no paid staff, and we are part-time.
Yes,
we can't do this full-time yet.
No.
In this future, hopefully that'll change. But as of right now, we have a limited, compared to other organizations, we have a limited amount of time to be out there, and that's usually up to a week on the extreme end, right?
Yeah.
And so we try to focus on certain, I guess you could say, work orders or certain situations in our limited amount of time.
It's important.
We want to make the most impact, right?
And it's important to recognize that's a shift in our priorities over the last few years.
Right.
I mean, early on, as we got started, it was general response.
Yeah. Anything.
I mean, anything that we could do to help. Which is how it should start.
Yeah,
right. It typically starts that way. And we recognized that we have a limited scope of time to be able to make an impact, and have found quite the niche, if you will, of a way we can have a huge impact in a short amount of time. So we're kind of working what we have right now to the most impact.
Yeah. And so we focus, primarily on the trees on houses, route clearance, egress, ingress,
right.
That sort of thing. And so with that in mind, that's kind of where we started our focus. And so Hurricane Helene makes landfall.
Yep.
So we're talking about our response to Hurricane Helene. Hurricane Helene makes landfall, moves up through eastern Georgia.
Yep.
We get a little bit, right? Like you said, we're on the clean side, so it wasn't as devastating because it hugged east pretty hard from on the cone of uncertainty there, and so we got two calls, basically out of that, but that set us up for the whole day after landfall that Friday.
We spent the whole day Friday here before we could even prep to go on the road or even do anything. Because we like to think about we work out from where we are.
Yep.
And so we had needs right here in North Fulton County and also in Paulding County of people that had driveways blocked and just dangerous tree situations that we had an opportunity to work on.
Right. And so then after that, we reached out to our contacts, Charles Backus, who's been a huge supporter of us, who's in Lake Park, just south of Valdosta. Also has
shout out to Charles.
Yeah, Charles is awesome.
First time I ever met Charles.
Oh, that's right.
He's legendary. I've heard about this guy for years, but
makes a good fish fry. Too.
We can talk about that at the end of the podcast.
But he also has interest in Steenhatchee as well. So he kind of got a double whammy from this. So he was obviously one of the first people we reached out to. And then our partnership with Inspiritus, they were pre-staged in Columbus because, again, initially the track had it going through basically Atlanta. So Columbus was going to position their team a lot closer to ground zero for the tree damage. But they're connected all over the place. And so they got in contact with Camp Tigart. But actually that took about 24 hours of all of us trying to figure out where we're going to stay.
I mean, I guess we were ready to sleep in the trucks.
Right. Yeah. We were basically ready to do that, which we have before. What made this one a little different for me though was our 3-month-old son was going with us.
He's a little boss with a chainsaw.
Right. He's already running that 500i. So anyways, not to get too far ahead, but between those two contacts, we settled in on a South Georgia response. So,
which is, again, it was through partnership, like you had mentioned earlier, that it kind of helps drive where we're going to go.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a lot of people reach out to us after storms.
Yes.
And we want and desire to help everybody we can.
I wish we could.
Kills
us not to.
Right. It does. It's very difficult, and it does put an added kind of stress on, okay, well, do we go here? We had calls from South Carolina.
Yeah.
We had calls from North Carolina. Those areas, in my opinion, before Saturday would have been extremely dangerous for,
we wouldn't be able to do anything.
No, there's nothing you could do
Couldn't
per
access
se.
anything.
There are different needs based on the timing before and after the storm. And so where we typically fit is that first couple days afterwards, typically with wind events.
Yeah.
We're not really prepped for a flooding event right away, after it happens. So, of course, you think about Inspiritus and what they're able to do. They have chainsaw crews. They have lots of chainsaw crews. They have a lot of great volunteers. But they look at us as, okay, you coming? Yeah, we're coming.
Right.
Okay, we're going to go after this type of priority work.
Right.
And we're going to let you do that while we then go and prep our chainsaw groups to come into this place. So it's like
behind us sometimes, like where we do the trees on houses, route clearance and stuff like that. And then, they can come in behind us and do stuff that's on the ground. It's still a huge need, obviously.
Absolutely.
But it works really well together.
And that's the key to all of this is like recognizing your niche and recognizing where you succeed at helping others and staying in that focus.
For sure.
And then it allows you the flexibility to work with so many other groups and forge those partnerships.
Without Inspiritus, we wouldn't have had a place to stay.
Yep.
We wouldn't have food to eat.
No, because you couldn't go to the grocery store in Valdosta.
Right, exactly.
We found out Walmart closed at 6:00, and rumors were the shelves had
zero,
just about nothing in them.
Yeah. And so, I mean, where we like to do the, technical tree stuff,
yeah,
they excel in areas that we just couldn't compete with
Absolutely.
at all. And
Right.
and we don't want to compete with that. We want to utilize that, and that's the whole thing is, going off on a side tangent here is, finding that lane and no logos, no egos. We're all working together, kind of thing. And, we've experienced that in the field where like we get some pushback or like some people don't like to really play nice with other people, and to be in a partnership with an organization that's just like all open arms, and like, hey, this is a puzzle. Here's how we fit. Here's how you fit. Yeah. Here's how other people fit. Rothrock Foundation, how they fit into all this.
Rex.
And it's just, shout out to Rex. It's just amazing. Like, and I love that side of disaster response when we all come together and work as a.
Well,
as
and then
village.
you look around the table at breakfast Sunday morning, and you've got Spiritus,
the
Rothrock Foundation, Sirens Project,
the Methodist.
The Methodist Church who has that camp, who provided, and then there was another group that were sort of tagged along with Inspiritus who brought a solar powered trailer to try to power the campsite.
Yeah.
Which did they get it working?
They did. They
Everything
got it working.
by the time we were out. So
Correct.
4 days without power and water at the campsite
with a 3-month-old.
Yeah.
He did awesome, though.
He did. He did great. You keep wanting to talk about that, but we'll talk about it later. But yeah, I mean, it's just, that's how this works.
Yeah.
This works when everybody puts their egos aside and says, you know what? Do you have work that needs to be done? How can I help you?
Right.
That, and you just blend and work together so seamlessly. And that's how all the work gets done.
Right. So we started locally. Made it to South Georgia, just north of Valdosta. We spent a lot of time in Adel and Nashville. And actually our first work order was somebody who reached out to us on social media that needed assistance, needed a generator and needed access in and out of their house and driveway.
Yep.
And so that was
let's
kinda
not
cool.
forget, talk about the generators too.
Right.
And there's
Cedar Crest
another
Church,
partnership we didn't even talk about.
Jay McAnally with Disaster Response Alliance, his partnership with Cedar Crest. We were able to get, I think, over a dozen generators, right at about 12 to 15 generators. And we assisted in the delivery of those generators.
Because we were already going.
We were already going.
You're going? Here, take these.
And that partnership works great. Some of our volunteers come from Jay's group, Bill Gilbert, who's a huge person in our volunteer group, and then a couple other guys too. Yeah. And it's just again going back to that partnership with other organizations. When you play nice with each other, you get so much more done, and you can grab from so many different areas. But the generators were a huge part of that. And so then we did a couple more work orders on the same block just north of Valdosta. We didn't go to like ground zero because and we typically don't. We like to kind of stay on the fringes, right, and try to help people that aren't getting all the media attention. Yeah. However, this hurricane was so overwhelming that there was probably 12 to 14 communities that were currently not under media coverage that still need assistance that no organization has even gotten to yet. We're talking like Hazelhurst, Vidalia, Baxley.
I know Waycross at a time still had damage.
Waycross, I mean, help. Nashville at the time, we were the first organization, apparently, is what I was told by the EMA, first organization to make contact with them. But it was just so overwhelming, the fact that there were so many little communities that still haven't,
Well, and that's not they're not used to that. They're not prepared for that. When you've got a town of 600-700 people and a sheriff, it's really hard to. Where do they go to pull resources?
Yeah, immediately overwhelmed, basically.
Right. And so what you see, which is really the beauty of it, is you see neighbors helping neighbors.
Right.
People
you've never talked to before. Helping you clear your driveway, filling up your generator. Had a little extra deer meat in the freezer.
Right, absolutely. Well, we saw that even in the street that we were working on in Adel. And I think it's Adel.
Adel, yeah.
Adel, I know. Adel
it's like
singer,
Steinhatchee. It's definitely Steinhatchee.
Yeah, we found that out. But yeah, in Adel, there was a woman. So we went to turn the truck around so we could go back because there was another potential work order down here. There was a massive oak tree on a house. I don't even know if you ever made the turn back there on the cul-de-sac to see it. So we went down there, and we were looking for it, and we were just kind of looking to the right on the road, and we thought we would see it coming back because we didn't see it here. And we're going to turn around. A woman comes up on a Polaris, and she says, hey, what are y'all doing? And she'd seen us already working, but she's like, what are you looking for? And we're like, we're looking for the house that has the oak tree on it. And she's just like, it's right there.
Yeah.
We just had not seen it.
Yeah.
She looks at it, and we were like, oh, we were told to come down here and check it out, potentially to help them out. She goes, oh, she's already got somebody. They're coming in the morning.
Yeah.
And I was like, who she got? What's she doing? She goes, oh, some friends of hers, some neighbors are going to come down, and they're going to work on it. And now, did they have the expertise to do it? I have no idea.
Yeah.
Could we have interjected ourselves and said, oh, well, we'll go ahead and do it because we have the expertise to do it?
Yeah.
No, she turns around and looks at Tim and I and says, are y'all with the government? No joke. That was the first question out of her mouth after she showed us where the tree was. And we were like, no, we're just here to help. We came down from the Atlanta metro area, and we do this as volunteers. And she goes, I've been waiting to do this all day, and hands us a donation.
Yeah.
And we're like,
crazy.
No. Hands us cash.
Right.
Just she's like, you guys need this for something that you're doing. It'll help you. And I'm like,
man, yeah. That's crazy.
I mean, we'd never met this woman.
No.
Knew nothing about her. She had seen the work we were doing up the way, because we had seen her drive by a couple times on her Polaris checking out her neighbors, you know? And it's just that kind of thing, that kind of generosity.
Yeah.
Her home was affected by this hurricane.
Right.
And she's looking at people that, and not bad enough that she needed any sort of, disaster assistance.
But still in the zone. So
she pays it forward.
Yeah.
And it just blew my mind.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And then we were able, with that cash, to go to a restaurant for dinner that, because there was really no power in the surrounding area, didn't have a credit card terminal. Right. And was cash only.
Yeah, we didn't have groceries. We couldn't get groceries. So like the only place that was open was that little Mexican joint.
And and it's crazy that is how we got to eat dinner that night. Was this woman giving us some cash as a donation for what we were doing for the family down the road. Yeah,
it's crazy.
That was one of those stories, that just kind of sticks with you and blows your mind a little bit.
It does, yeah. And we spent the next 3 days in South Georgia, and they made our way to Lake Park and helped out actually a homeowner in Lake Park that we had helped out during Idalia. And that was kind of the theme, like even with Rebuilding Hope guys, the guys from Dalton who do awesome work as well.
Yeah.
They were helping families that they had helped the last year.
Right.
And so it's kind of a double whammy kind of thing. But that did help us integrate into that community a little bit easier, since we had just gone through that last year, kind of thing. But those stories always are insane. And we had so many crazy God moments throughout this entire trip, and just the people you meet and everything. It's one of those that sticks with you forever.
Yeah. Well, you recognize that's where God works.
Right.
Is in the hearts and minds of the people who are serving, but also being served.
Yeah.
I find myself, I feel kind of silly sometimes, but people will say to me, and I know they say this to you, thank you. Yeah. They'll thank us for the help. And I think all I can say back is, well, no, thank you.
Right.
Thanks for the opportunity to help you.
Yeah.
And it's weird because I should be saying, you're welcome, happy to do it.
Yeah.
No. It's just that I had a chance to help them out, and
and you filled me up at the same time.
Right. So it fills us to be able to serve others, and it's really great that's how this really works, and that's what you're seeing a lot of right now in North Carolina.
Right. Church is really stepping up, NGOs stepping up, and just really making a lasting impact in those communities. Because say what you will, about the government and maybe FEMA's, response to this whole thing or whatever. But at the end of the day, the people are getting help, and it's through a lot of it's through these churches.
Absolutely.
And through these NGOs. And it's a really cool thing to see, to be honest. So, But yeah, it's we're kind of on call for route clearance in North Carolina, maybe in the next like 4 weeks or so.
Yeah.
Search and rescue still got to take place up there.
That's what's hard to believe.
Yeah.
We're a week and a half out.
Still going.
Still search and rescue. Yeah. Usually after a tornado, search and rescue is done
48 hours, maybe.
48 hours,
yeah.
No, this is it's
long term.
I think the hardest thing is, you mentioned earlier, the outskirts.
Yeah.
The outskirts of the big city. People call it the suburbs.
Yeah.
But there's a further out than the suburbs, the outskirts.
The haulers.
and we tend to gravitate to those areas because the resources that the people have there, they're the last on the resource list, because the resources tend to work center out.
Right.
We very rarely, with the exception of maybe Noonan, have gone into like the heart of a city to do the work, where we're typically on the outskirts because we're coming in and finding the need being right there, right?
Exactly.
As you come in. And that's where a lot of people live that don't have the resources. And so you transfer that to the idea of what's going on in Asheville and Boone. There are countless tiny towns around there in the western North Carolina and East Tennessee mountains. Countless.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that aren't even on a map.
Yeah.
There's places out there.
You can't even Google map, like route to them.
And
you have to know where they are.
Human beings live there.
Yeah.
People live there. That's where they either chose or were raised to live.
Right.
And
they have a family. They have
family. They have dogs. They have a house. They have
a life.
They have resources. They're cut off even still.
Yeah.
And that breaks my heart, because, again, when the focus is center in, come in, everything gets set up in the big city.
Yeah.
Then you got to cycle it back out there. And so I think you're going to be looking at a couple weeks from now, will be the first time people can get to some of these little small communities out there.
For sure. And we'll really, Helene's going to be one of those storms that, the estimated damage right now is at $150 billion. That's obviously going to go up. Mm-hmm. Everything right now is still preliminary because the disaster is still unfolding.
Right.
And there's some areas, we had a ServSource conversation last night. And Gary from Mercy Chefs was talking about, he's talking with the locals in Asheville and stuff. And there's some of those small communities you're talking about probably won't get infrastructure back. So we're talking about natural gas, electricity, water, until maybe in some cases the first of next year.
Yeah.
And what that means is this goes from a hurricane disaster to a health crisis,
a humanitarian crisis.
Right,
yeah,
exactly. It almost shifts, and that's directly related to the hurricane. So we won't really see the full effects of Helene and know what the total devastation was until probably halfway through next year.
Right.
And that just gives you an idea of the scope. And that was the same with Katrina. We didn't really know how bad it was until months to almost a year after the storm. Yeah. And so it's going to be very, very similar. We are poised and putting things together for a return trip to South Georgia next week. So I don't know, whenever this gets edited, we might be down there.
Yeah, who knows?
But we are planning on doing that, and then probably going to North Carolina, in November or something like that. So that's kind of where we're at with the response. Like I said, we are monitoring Milton. We are, though, prioritizing the needs here in South Georgia and those smaller communities first, because that's...
But it goes twofold. There are many people helping others in Asheville and surrounding areas.
Right.
Many. So I've been asked a couple times, are you going to North Carolina?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so right now.
Right.
What we do is not necessarily needed yet, or it will get taken care of by somebody that's already there. Florida, Florida gets, I don't like to say this, but Florida's used to hurricanes.
Right. I mean, it's part of your
disaster response in Florida. It's part of life. There are groups that just focus on Florida and disasters down there.
Right.
What doesn't exist right now is the scope and attention on South Georgia and on East Georgia. And so I think that, you have to pick where you're going to do it and then put your whole heart into it.
Right, for sure.
I think it's very tempting for us to spread thin and say, oh, well, I can do that. And we could, if we could grow, we could do all of these things. Yeah. But that's not where we are today.
No,
and we have to do what's gonna have the most impact right now, and trust God that the others are gonna do the other.
Right, and that's where we really lean into like prayer and stuff on where are we needed, where should we go, lead us to the right places, kind of thing. And I'm glad you hit the topic of being spread thin.
Yeah.
I know the election's coming up. There's a lot of uncertainty in a lot of people's hearts, and stuff like that. And a lot of organizations are spread extremely thin.
Yep.
What I want to say is, first off, thank you to everybody who has donated to us.
Oh, absolutely.
And has, supported us financially during this hurricane and beyond. And also through prayer and everything like that. This is one of those moments in time, no matter what the economic outcome looks like, going into next year and all that stuff, putting all that aside, this is a huge opportunity to support nonprofit organizations to help people in a time of need, because everybody, and I mean everybody, we're talking about Samaritan's Purse, God's Pit Crew, 8 Days of Hope.
Yeah.
We're talking about these huge organizations
absolutely
that are so spread thin right now because of the hurricane situation. Helene, by itself, basically caused a huge need, and it caused basically a shortcoming of resources, right?
Yeah.
And now you have Milton. Yeah. It's just another hit. Well, and so it's really important to support
and you can't
those
forget
orgs.
You're still you mentioned these other groups that are spread thin. I saw the other day on Facebook, Inspiritus.
Yeah.
They're still working in Fort Myers.
From Ian.
They're still doing cleanup in Fort Myers. That need never went away.
Never did.
It's still there.
Yeah.
And now 2 more hurricanes of massive scale
are in some of those areas. Yeah.
Exactly. And so the response to one becomes a response to the other. So, right now I think if you can do anything, do something.
Right.
And it does, somebody asked, well, what do you do? It's like, find an organization that you can get behind.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be us. Like,
absolutely
not a plug for us.
No.
It's a plug for, like you said, somebody you feel passionate about, or you like what they're doing. It's important to give to them.
Yeah.
It really is.
Skip some luxury for the week.
Right.
And give something.
Yeah.
Because, we saw what one generator did down there.
Man.
That story that you put out, that one generator from a donation from Cedar Crest Church.
Yeah, we're talking Ackworth, Georgia. Made its way to northern Valdosta, powered a community impact center full of youth that have life-saving medical equipment on oxygen, and that generator was able to provide that life-saving medical treatment to these kids.
And that was one person felt called to
buy
donate the money, at least donate however they got it, donate the money, whatever. That little donation compounded to save a life.
Right.
And that's the key that I want people to think about as they look into the holiday season. Holiday season's coming up.
Yeah.
At least all the TV commercials are telling me that.
Right.
Here it's October and
we're already got Christmas
inundated. But people choose to do year-end givings, and a lot of corporations double year-end givings for people. Like, say, we'll match whatever you donate to your charity. Pick a charity.
Yeah, it's so needed.
Some people have chosen to pick us. We're grateful for that.
Very grateful.
But we give to other charities, and it's like, pick a charity, pick somebody, and then watch for the stories of the return of that investment of either time or money.
Right.
Whatever you can give.
Yeah, I mean, some people are like, I'm give you, $25. It's like, it's not much, but you understand, like, that runs our skid steer.
Yeah.
For like a whole other day.
Oh, absolutely.
To where we can take care of these trees on homes that require the heavy equipment.
Right.
I mean, it adds up.
Yeah.
It might not seem significant to you, but to those organizations that are receiving it, man, it's game changer.
$5 buys a case of water.
It does.
We drink a lot of water when we're
a ton of water. It's hot down there in South Georgia.
It is hot in South Georgia. So, that 85 is not really 85 last week.
Not when the humidity gets involved.
But I mean, that it just giving compounds.
Yeah.
in incredible ways. And the stories that are going to, not only is the story of Helene going to be the massive devastation, but it's going to be the story of hope, that was given to people by other people helping
that don't even know each other, man.
Absolutely.
That have never, it's just crazy to think about.
And I mean, that strips out, that's God's people doing what God's people are called to do at that point.
Right.
Just go help others. And that, I heard somebody say about foster care once, that if everybody in the church did something about foster care, we wouldn't have a need for it.
Right.
Now, I think there's some hyperbole in that.
Right.
But if it makes you think, if everybody...
What's possible, right?
What's possible, absolutely. You wouldn't... If everybody did something about disaster relief, or at least something about disaster relief, these things, we wouldn't need...
We wouldn't be stretched
federal
so
assistance.
thin,
We wouldn't be stretched so thin. I mean, it would be... So much more could be done.
I think we're heading in a good direction. I think just as Hurricane Katrina kind of jump-started a lot of reform and momentum in the disaster response community in space, I think Helene is going to do the exact same thing here and usher in a whole nother generation of people who are passionate about disaster response. I think about our local community, Cherokee County. Cherokee Connect, our little local Facebook group, was just wild. Blowing up though on people helping any way they could. Small businesses doing donation drives and people just driving to North Carolina, and trying to help out. And I think it's really cool. But like you said, it's right now is going to be so important. As far as
there's chaos. Goes. It's absolute chaos in North Carolina, too, because you just have people showing up. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I think there's a beauty in that chaos, and that they're going to then be given an opportunity to do what they want to be doing. And then they're going to turn around and say, okay, I want to do this more.
Yeah.
And I think it's in these horrible crises that things improve and change and people grow.
For sure.
And, I had a friend while we were driving back from Valdosta. A friend of mine was texting me. He was leaving for North Carolina.
Yeah.
With two contacts actually. One we gave him, and one
Reach
he
Out
already
Worldwide.
had.
Shout out to them. They're doing good stuff up there.
And he left with an ATV, a bunch of cans of gas, and a trailer full of whatever supplies he and his family could pull together.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard from him, and I'm not bothering him with it. But on the way there, he was asking me, he was leaving that next day. He was asking me questions like, what should I expect? I was like, expect chaos.
Right.
Expect that everything you think you know about what you're going to find up there and how you'll get implemented and used will not happen.
Right.
You probably will not be able to get in touch with this contact or that contact. So make contact.
Yeah.
Just go. Do the best, and then don't have any expectation for what you are going to find or how you'll be used.
Yeah.
And the only thing I've heard, again, I haven't reached out because I know he doesn't have cell service, but somehow he got in touch with one of our mutual friends who said yesterday he finally got to change his underwear after 4 days.
Yeah. Praise God.
Right. So if you haven't gotten to shower, change your underwear, whatever, in 4 days, you're working.
Right.
You've been put to work, and you're blessing.
Right.
people.
That's right. I love what Jay, we just had a chainsaw safety kind of presentation at Cross Point Church up in Cartersville on Sunday. Jay handed out these little pieces of paper to everybody, and there's a picture of Gumby in the little insignia, and it says Semper Gumby, which means always be flexible. And that's that's like what you're saying, always be flexible.
Absolutely.
Because it's always going to change. It's not at all what you're expecting.
Right.
So no, that's cool. I mean, Helene, massive storm.
Yeah.
Complete devastation. Some silver lining in here, though.
I think so. I think I think it'll take time. I really don't think the silver lining is going to make itself apparent right away, but it's already starting.
Yeah, it is. And again, thank you guys so much for all the support.
Couldn't do it without support.
It means so much to us. We've been blown away, honestly, by all the comments on social media and the prayers and the financial assistance. It's just been probably one of our most impactful disasters that we've been a part of. So we can't thank you enough. But I'm gonna keep watching Milton. I think we have. Let's see. We're gonna refilm the Chasing with Chainsaws podcast. Also have Jared Stevenson coming on from Convex talking about some tornado probes and tornado science, and then Tim Ard's coming on after that, and then we have chainsaw safety, and then we have a couple other guests that we're reaching out to. JP from Noonan is going to be on here. Who lived through like ground zero of the Noonan tornado in 2021.
The epicenter of it.
And his story is absolutely insane. And he's going to talk a little bit about kind of the anxiety that comes along with surviving a storm. And I'm super excited about that.
That's a whole topic.
It's a whole topic.
Mental health after a storm.
For sure. So we're all going to get into that. But yeah, we'll see you guys, I guess,
when we see you.
Yeah, a couple of weeks, hopefully, if we don't have any more issues.
It's all right. We'll sneak in and do this when we can, right?
That's right. That's right. All right, guys, take care. We'll see you next time.
Bye now.